Hey gang, me and Bimble are up on the Blue Ridge Parkway. We are overlooking the Irish Creek Valley behind us. And I figured I'd come up here and discuss my results from testing the rear sprockets from Moto Cult on this bike. So I've now had the opportunity to test the 43, 41, and 39 tooth rear sprockets and give you my results on that. The 39 is what comes standard with the Stage 4 Plus kit. And in my opinion, it's probably the highest performing of the three. It's the lowest geared. And it's very good for acceleration and climbing hills and mountains and things like that. It does really well on that, and you can accelerate uphill with that one. So I wanted, but it's a little too low geared because your RPMs at cruising speed are a little bit high, in my opinion. And when I tested my fuel range, that bore out, because I was only getting about 55 or so miles per gallon, trying to hold it at 55 and 60 miles an hour, up and down hills and things like that. And so I thought my fuel economy was a little low, RPMs a little high. So I decided to go taller, and I went to the 41 tooth. Now with that, it did lower my RPMs at cruising speed, and that's the one I had installed when I did my 1,300 mile road trip, and my fuel economy was vastly improved. The lowest fuel economy I got on that trip was 66 miles per gallon, and that was in the flat in Ohio, bucking a really strong headwind. Every other stop I was doing from 70 to 90 miles per gallon. And so the bike performed really well with that 41 tooth. And it's a little slower on acceleration, so my 0 to 60 time probably suffered by maybe a second, but its hill climbing capability was still there. It just didn't do it with as much authority as the 43 tooth. So with each one of the sprockets, you've kind of got to make some concessions as to where your strengths and weaknesses lie. With the 41, I just can't accelerate as strongly uphill as I could with the 43. I can't merge into traffic quite as fast because, like I said, I've lost a little bit of acceleration. And we're talking minute levels of acceleration here. It's not nothing you're going to notice from the seat of your pants. You might notice it on a stopwatch. But other than that, the 41 did really well, I thought. But I still kind of think the cruising RPMs could be lowered a little more, so I picked up the 39 just to try it. And the 39 did do well at lowering the cruising RPMs. I was really pleased with that. And it would hold speed on inclines up and down the hills and mountains and things like that, but it could not accelerate. It could only hold the speed. So if your momentum was broken at some point during your climb, you had to back off the throttle for a turn, a car pulls out in front of you and you got to slow down for him, you could not accelerate back up to the speed limit, was the problem I was having with that one. I could shift down to fourth, but the RPMs were so high that it's really only good up to about 50 miles an hour. And so trying to climb at 50 miles an hour in fourth gear, you were spinning the engine really high and you're kind of defeating the purpose of trying to save some gas mileage. So you're burning a lot of fuel once again with that one. And it's slower on acceleration. And I didn't test any of them for top speed because I think that's kind of moot because the top speed is not sustainable. This is a small engine. If you run around wide open throttle at top speed or get on the interstate and just try to run 70 or 80 miles an hour, it's not going to last very long. So to me, it's good for, the 55, 60 mile an hour roads, and you got a little extra in your pocket if you need to do an overtake or you come to an incline, you got a little extra. If you just try to run around at max speed, you're going to tear up your engine. Just my opinion on that. So I think the 41 is the best all around. So that's what I've got back on the bike now, and that's the one I will be running. And so, not to make this video too short, we're going to talk about a couple of accessories I've done to the bike, or little modifications and additions since the last time you guys have really taken a good look at it. All right, so first up is the fuel cap. I've turned the bars a little bit so you guys can get a better shot of it. And that's the engraved fuel cap that Janus sells. And that's an expensive item. It's kind of stupid expensive, really. But I wanted it. I thought Bimble has earned a little bit of bling. And since I plan to keep this bike forever and never sell it, why not have a nice looking fuel cap on the bike? Now, the way I ended up affording that, because those cost $300, is I camped out the entire trip when I went to the Janus Owners Rally instead of getting hotel rooms. And the money I saved by doing that paid for the fuel cap. So that was my motivation for doing that. So I had to put up with a little bit of discomfort, but that'll last me a lifetime. So yes, I did that. Now those come with a kind of a raw finish almost. I'll have to get a picture to show you what it originally looked like. And I did the paint fill on it myself. And I did a gloss black textured finish that turned out really cool. I ended up literally watching paint dry because I painted the thing, and then before I smoothed everything out, I let it dry quite a bit, just to the point where it wasn't tacky enough for me to leave a fingerprint on it, but I could still, put a fingernail in it. And at that point, that's when I cleaned everything off, and I turned it over and pressed it repeatedly into a Scotch-Brite pad to create the texture that you see on it. Turned out pretty good, in my opinion. And next up, if you're eagle-eyed enough, you might have spotted it, but Bimble is sporting a mud flap now. So I had mentioned in a previous video that I wanted to cut the front fender off and install a mud flap. There it is, it's on. The reason for doing that is because the way the front suspension works and the way things are mounted, if I kickstart the bike or press down on the suspension, the front mud guard rotates rearward. And in the process of rotating rearward, the trailing edge gets closer to the ground when you do that. So you lose ground clearance under compression. So if you were to like push this bike off of a curb or something like this, you would bang your fender on that curb. And so with me using this as an ADV bike as well, back in the backcountry, I'm constantly going over rocks, stepping off ledges and things like that, and I've dinged up the front mudguard pretty good to the point where I've had to bend it and straighten it back out and things like that. So I'd been wanting to do this kind of conversion for quite a while and finally got around to doing it. And this also starts at the owners rally because I ran into somebody there who was riding a Griffin 250, and he had a mudguard or a mud flap mounted just like that on his. But the Griffin, the fender is only about this long. And so it's just kind of hanging out there in the open. But since it's the same actual suspension setup, just a different rake angle, the mounting points for the mudguard are on the Griffin as well. So he just bolted it to those. And so once I saw that, I explained to him what I was wanting to do, and he agreed to make me one and ship it off to me. And I'll put a link in the description box to his YouTube channel. If you want one, contact him. I don't consider it a modification for the faint of heart. Like I said, you are cutting and making a permanent change to a factory painted part. You've got to cut that fender off. I cut about 2.5 inches off mine. And he just made these out of some material he had laying around. And he will make some more, but eventually he's going to run out of that material and they'll be gone after that. And that's something Janus could make. I'm really surprised they haven't done something like that. Might be worth them checking into to see if there's enough demand for something like that. It was for me, because like I said, Bimble gets used as an everyday bike, an ADV bike, a touring bike. It does it all. It's just an motorcycle. It doesn't fall into any category. It just gets used for everything. So those are my new adjustments, or my new modifications, and my final verdict on the Sprocket. My choice is the 41. That's the way I'd go if I was doing it again. Take care. I'll catch you guys next time.